Now, let's begin. So for this particular first page, okay, you will realize that these are the 6 different types. Now, what are the types of experimental setup question? These are your relationship, aim of experiment, conclusion, okay, control setup, fair test, reliability. Familiar questions, right? Okay, you will definitely have seen it in your exam papers before during your practice. Just that in school, I don't think they focus a lot on these, okay? So today, these 4 lessons, we are just going to focus on these 6 different experimental setup questions. Now, before I start, I need to give you a rough idea, an introduction, okay? In all science questions, all right, there will always be what we call variables, right? So variables, what did they say here? Okay, variable is any factor, trait, or condition, all right, that can be, okay, the word here is actually changed, okay, that can be changed in the experiment. So what are these conditions? Conditions are things like, are we changing the temperature? Are we changing the environment? Are we changing the location? Okay, factors are things like, are we changing the type? Okay, are we changing the volume? Okay, what are we changing? So these are all what we call variables. Now, let's move on. For example, so what are these variables that you need to, that can be changed? Okay, so in any question, in any case, they ask you to identify the change variable or measured variable. Some of you in school, they might not use change variable or measured variable. They will use things like dependent variable, independent variable. Okay, but in PSLE or in your exams, you might not know what they will use. So it's good to know what these variables meant. Okay, so if you look at the bottom, I already wrote for you. Change variable is the same as independent variable. Measured variable is the same as dependent variable. Okay? So at least you need to be very clear with both. Okay? Play safe, always good to know both of them. Now, so back to my question. If they ever ask you to change, to identify what is the change variable or measured variable, okay, it can never be what I call, it can never be water. It can never be beaker, right? It will always be the something of water, something of beaker, okay? So please, all right, you need to be very clear with this, okay? Now, so over here you have variables, right? So anytime they ask you to identify the change variable, measured variable, remember it can never be a one-word answer. You cannot say container, you cannot say water, you cannot say room, always, okay? It is always what of the container, what of the water, what is the exact factor, okay, that you are changing, all right? So I've already written a few examples here for you, okay? So please remember, okay? Now, so let's again define, okay, what is the change variable? What is the independent variable? It's basically a variable that you decide to test. Okay, I know you're about to say to change. Okay, I'm not going to use the word change. All right, it's the variable that you decide to test in the experiment. Okay, let's write this down. It is basically the variable that you observe first and measure, all right, at the end of the experiment. Okay, now can someone tell me what is a control or constant variable? Okay, so it's basically variables that you keep the same, all right, and do not change throughout. Okay, the key thing here is throughout the experiment. All right, so throughout the experiment, you don't change it, you keep it the same. Okay, and this y'all should know it's most of the variables that are in the experiment. Okay, that's within the experiment, it's most of them. Okay, so you change one variable, you measure one variable, the rest are all kept constant, they are all kept the same. Following that, okay, before I move on to the next part, all right, let's actually think of what I want to mention here. Okay, please remember, okay, before we move on, please remember that variables, okay, must be quantifiable. Okay, what is the meaning of quantifiable? Okay, so I'm going to write a key thing here. Variables must be quantifiable. This is a big word. Okay, but it's actually, this word is basically quantity. Okay, so what is the meaning of variables must be quantifiable? Okay, quantifiable just means they, okay, can be measured. Okay, you can measure them. All right, they can be measured in some way. Okay, you can measure these variables.